So those are my Valorant patch notes rundown for 8.01. I'm going to go over every change but the breeze change. So the breeze change I'm going to go over on Sunday, but A-hole has been reopened, and essentially what they've done is they've shifted the problem instead of fixing it. So they've made attacking, so attacking as according to them, has felt overly restrictive. So they've added the hole back basically. And what they've done is they basically just shifted the problem. They made it more restrictive on defense instead of attack. And I think that they could have actually done different changes to avoid this. But I'll talk about that on Sunday. Next we'll go on to Skye, which is like the main change in this whole thing. There's a lot of text here, so I'm just going to go straight to where the actual changes are. So now, Guiding Light no longer regenerates charges during a round, and Guiding Light now automatically activates the flash at the end of its lifetime. So there are a couple things that make this change pretty significant. First of all, you lose one flash on average, and you lose 2 flashes sometimes. Next is Guiding Light now automatically activates the flash at the end of its lifetime, which is interesting for like fake flashes, and is also really like new player friendly change, where at the end of like the timings you can just always get the flash. But there are times where like you miss the flash through a doorway and then it flashes your team, so you actually kind of have to, there are some cases where you do need to be better at Skye. Things like fake flashes, as well, as I've said, you need to think about the pathing a bit more. You can't just throw it in front of you and then, you know, it'll flash you eventually, so you actually have to think about the pathing of the flash. I'm going to go back up to this. So this does give quite a bit of chance that Skye will not be played because she loses like something quite integral to the role, which is having a cooldown. So maybe there's a chance they'll add a cooldown back to her. Don't know when that will happen. I don't know what ability it'll actually be on. There's a chance they add it to Overgrowth and give her fuel, potentially for Overgrowth, but I'm not sure. That would be really weak. But I don't think they would want to make her strong when they buffer again, because they will buffer again, because this is way too weak. She's never going to see play like this. Guiding Light is way too weak now, I think, to not get 3. I mean, to be fair, it's probably a bit underrated right now, to be fair, but I don't think it's going to get play over the state of like KO and like Sova Fade. I think Fade is also really underrated as well as an agent. So I mean, Gecko as well. Gecko is really strong too. Although I don't think I think Gecko is starting to not be underrated now. I think people are starting to really realize that he is really strong. So I don't see her fitting in the meta because of the surrounding initiators are very strong right now. So while I don't think this is necessarily weak, I think comparatively it's weak. So let me go on to Seekers. So when a Seeker gets close to a target, the target player will now get yellow directional warning indicator. So this was removed a long time ago. And yes, they removed it. And I'm surprised they removed it because they tend to like gameplay clarity when they can. So it's very weird that they removed it in the first place. I think if anything, it's just quality of life more than anything. But for the most part, like you can now see in the chaos when like where the Seekers are and if they're close to you and that kind of stuff, without having to listen for it. So it is like, I think it's more quality of life than anything, but it's fine. To be fair, we'll talk about the impact of this on the meta. So Skye will not be played, pretty much straight up. So now that means that double Initiator is going to be played probably a lot more, which is a double-edged sword really, because we get less slots for other roles, but we get more slots for Initiator. And personally, I like double Initiator, so I don't really mind huge amount. But I don't like not seeing like some of the like more fringe picks in other roles, such as Deadlock or Sage. But I don't really like Sage, but I like when people innovate with those sort of fringe picks that don't have a lot of general like obvious play, I guess. So seeing like Deadlock being played in some pro games, I think that might be short-lived potentially, just because we can't have Skye now. Because that one slot that she was using is now going to become 2 slots. So then it's going to be a lot harder to fit comps together, because you might require the double Initiator just to like at a base level to get through at like a core, for your core comp you might have to have 2 Initiators, or at least 1 Initiator then plus 1. and it might obviously rotate through. I think KO is going to get played a lot. I think Gecko is going to get played a lot. Yeah, I think that's going to be the two initiators we'll see a lot that have become core on maps, and then we might see like a supplementing initiator such as Sova or Fade, which tends to be how things go. So we'll see a lot less of Deadlock and things because they just won't have the slots to play them. Double duelist might suffer as well. We were seeing like sometimes Raze Yoru or Jet Yoru or something like that. Yoru's going to suffer from this a bit, although he is playable as single sometimes. So we'll see, I guess, what happens. Usually he played single with like Chamber or something, but yeah, we'll see what happens. But I think Skye is not going to be played, and it's going to shift the meta quite a bit in other roles more so. I mean, Initiator Gen 2 is quite a big shift. But it wasn't Alien. Sometimes Skye will be played double Initiator as well. It just lowers the freedom in the surrounding roles, and it ups the freedom in Initiator roles. And obviously, when it comes to like building a team for like VCT and that kind of stuff, like pro level, you can imagine there's going to be some teams that are thinking like, how are we going to fit double Initiator every single time? We don't really have two Initiator players, or like the ones that kind of fit together like that. So there's going to be like some problems like VCT, some teams that might have, I mean, to be fair, it's a sudden change as well, right before the season starts. A lot of people were complaining about that. Yeah, it's crazy that they've changed this now, considering how much time has been since like pro. And I guess because it's the new year, maybe that's the reason why they did it, but I don't know. We also ISO. Basically, double tap, shootable orbit duration has been increased to 2 to 3. Initial buff and shield duration increased from 15 to 20 seconds. Shield width reduced from 120 to 100. So this change is just to make him less obvious around corners, where you can see his shield first and then you see him. Sometimes it would even straight up reveal him where he wasn't even visible to you, but you could see the bit of the shield. So they've just made it a bit more flush to him, so maybe he doesn't get seen around corners at least as easily. Shootable orb duration 2 to 3 seconds. Technically, this would be like an additional, not quite 1 second, but it would be like actually it might be, just because you weren't used to utilizing the full 2 seconds before. You're probably gonna shoot it like at a stretch at like 2.7 to 2.9 seconds, right? Obviously not straight on 3. So you might actually get like an additional 1 second to the actual buff duration just because you delayed the orb. There's a chance that works, and then also you would also then get a further 5 seconds now from this. The question is does that extra like 5 to 6 seconds actually mean anything? Will you actually be taking a fight that you wouldn't be taking before? No, probably not, right? Especially, well, it's obviously very situational. There's a decent chance you could, well, not a decent chance, but there's a chance you could, especially because you know that you have a higher shield duration, so there's actually a higher chance you would look for that fight in that extra additional 6 seconds. But if you think about it with like execution, like executing sites and then retaking, there are teams, especially in like the higher levels of play for sure. This does not affect ISO, mainly because the champ, like the agent itself, isn't really that good anyway for pro play really. Essentially, what I was talking about is you get an extra 6 seconds, and when you're retaking and when they're retaking and you've just executed the site, does that extra 6 seconds actually matter? Like, do they actually go in those extra 6 seconds? Like, is that like maybe some data that Riot have, like when a retake starts, like maybe the retake, like first contact kill is at like 17 seconds after the bomb's planted, so they just need like that extra push. So then when ISO gets the first contact fight, he actually has his shield up from the actual initial like execute. Maybe that's the reason why they did this change. Obviously, I don't know with the access to those stats, but maybe that does actually matter like statistically. But I don't think this actually matters. At least we shouldn't be playing for it, I don't think, as players. So I think that we shouldn't pick ISO to play for it. To play for like this type of change, because realistically I don't think it changes anything. Next is contingency, cost reduced to 250 from 250 to 200. Personally, I don't really like this. When an agent or an ability is weak, to be fair, the power budget of ISO, I don't think cares about contingency. I think it's his fragile and his ult are the main two things they want to have strong. And obviously they've just buffed the double tap, but the double tap is honestly really weak anyway. And I think contingency is the one ability where they would say, like, we don't really need that ability. Similar to overgrowth on Skye, where they're just like, you know what, we just won't bother with that ability. That ability can just be bad because the rest of her abilities are good. And we don't want to mess up the power budget of the agent by having all 4 abilities be good. We'll get on to Raise in a second. But yeah, contingency, I don't like saying these changes because I feel like this should just be make the ability better to fit the 250 rather than just making it worse to fit 200. They might think that they probably just gave more power budget to this, so they're thinking we need to take power budget out of contingency, or at least we need to not give it any more strength, so we'll just make it lower cost to fit how good it is, or how bad it is, I guess. Once again, I don't really like this change that much. I feel like they should just make it stronger, really, but whatever, especially because he is a struggling agent. I think if the agent is strong, then you can start looking into more of the power budget like Skye. But I think for the most part, it should just be a buff to contingency instead, like an actual buff to the actual ability itself rather than the buff to the price. So Raze is an agent that for some reason just dodges all the really, really strong changes, and the reason why I think that is because to be fair, Skye was a popular agent until I've just absolutely nuked it to the ground. But maybe it's because Raze is a duelist, and duelists tend to just be more popular. So maybe that's the reason why they don't feel the need to like really, really nerf her. And plus, to be fair, she did get a big nerf a long time ago with her ult. But I feel like as people have got more used to the ult, they're starting to get better with it over time, and it's not as big of a nerf as people, I think, really. I think people overreacted at the time of how strong of a nerf it was. But to be fair, like, it is hit or miss with the ult. So, and her power budget clearly is in her nade anyway. And so blast pack audio for Raze traveling through the air with the blast pack no louder when she is traveling towards you. I mean, to be fair, it's nice to have things more clear to you when you are like back sight and like everything's like coming at you. It's really, really hard to like understand what's happening sometimes. So having this is quite nice, but at the same time, I don't think it matters a huge amount. It can kind of help you for like taking like the first fight. Like if you know, like if you hear footsteps and then you hear a Raze, like you can kind of discern like the Raze putting on me first. So maybe that's nice. Also, it doesn't really say how much louder it is. So it might be really loud and it might actually block out other sounds. So that's also like a thing. Like it could actually be a buff by accident where it actually blocks out other important sounds. But yeah, but I don't know without playing with it. It probably doesn't do that. It's probably not that loud, but it might be. Who knows? Without actually playing it. Gameplay updates. So this is actually a big change that we'll talk about, and the rest I won't talk about. Actually, I might talk about one other change. Basically, the first 100 milliseconds of jumpstart, the projectile will have the same like consistency, velocity imparted, what they say here. So what it is that jump throws are just going to be way more consistent, or at least a bit more consistent. So it's actually quite big for lineups, where now some lineups are going to be consistent. And I think jump throwing in general has gotten more consistent over time as people have figured out things how to do it, things like binding the same key and that kind of stuff. So fixed a bug where the A-hole door was starting in the open position. I thought this was an actual change because there was no reason for it to start closed. They just opened it. Because there is no reason for that to be closed, right? It's just a rotation, right? But there's also then no reason for the door to be there because there's no way that an attacker is going to go up there and close it. And there's no way a defender will close off another way to get into the site. So a whole door literally became useless. And I will talk about that on Sunday. There's also all the changes there are done. So yeah, this is it for the patch notes rundown. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in my next one.